We get a lot of calls here at our office about our people's irrigation systems, people wanting to know how to turn the water off, how to turn the water on, how to adjust their controller, different things like that. So I just want to take a minute and go over some basic components of an irrigation system. So first and foremost, this is where it all starts, right here at the ball valve or the gate valve if you have that. But this is where your main shutoff for the irrigation system is. It could be in numerous different places at your house. It could be under your house. It could be in the crawl space. It could be inside the house in the garage or in a utility room. It could be outside in the yard behind the water meter or on the side of the house. So there's a lot of different places it could be. But this valve right here operates your irrigation. This is what allows water to come in and out of your irrigation system. So right now it's in the open position. And if somebody calls and says that they have a leak on the irrigation system, they don't know how to cut it off, the first thing we're going to tell them to do is go to the ball valve, cut the water off. And that's going to be done just by turning it 90 degrees like that. That's going to stop any more water from going into the irrigation system. One of the key components of every irrigation system is the controller. This is the brain behind the system. It's what tells the system when to start, when to stop, how to go to the next zone. And we've talked a little bit about smart controllers. There's multiple different types. There's many different brands. We recommend multiple different brands of smart controllers. No two of them are exactly the same, but most of them do a really good job. So again, this is what's going to tell your system when to cut off, when to cut on. This is where you're going to adjust your watering. This is where you're going to wire up the zones in the controller. Everything starts here. One of the other major components of your irrigation system is your backflow assembly. Now this is something that every irrigation system needs to have. There's two different types of backflow assemblies in our area that are allowed for irrigation systems, so I always recommend that you check with what's allowable in your area, your county, your state. Here we have what's called an RPZ backflow preventer, or a reduced pressure zone assembly, and this is called a PVB, or a pressure vacuum breaker. But these two devices, your system must have one or the other of these. These allow water to flow into the system but not back into the potable drinking water. So once the irrigation water gets into the irrigation system past the backflow, it can't go backwards. This is also the part that is one of the more expensive components of your irrigation system, and a lot of times is above ground, outside of your house. And this is one of the things that you really want to make sure that you get winterized. This is why winterization is so important. When this thing freezes and bursts, it's going to be a very costly repair that you really want to avoid. All right, so kind of start to finish how an irrigation system works in a nutshell. Water comes in from the main point of connection through the ball valve, goes in through the backflow preventer. Where does it go once it leaves there? Once it leaves the backflow preventer, it's going to go out through the main line out to the field. It's going to go to these valves. Now each one of your zones, you hear us talking about zones or valves, the same thing. Each one of your zones has a valve that controls it. Okay, so the water is going to come through the backflow, out to the valves. One valve operates at a time, and then it's going to go out to one of these, to either a rotor sprinkler head, a spray head, or it could be a drip zone. Many different types of zones that you can have, but these are the more common ones, are rotor zones and spray zones. So one of the more common issues that you can have with an irrigation system is what we call a stuck valve or a weeping valve. What happens is one of these valves gets some sort of debris in it or a failed component inside of it. It stops this valve from closing properly. So once your system is run, sometimes people will call and say, hey, one of my zones, it just keeps running and running and running. It won't shut off. They'll say, I went to the controller and turned the controller off. It still keeps running. What do I do? Well, the quick answer is you need to turn the water off to the irrigation system, which is through that ball valve that we talked about earlier. Once that happens, you call us, we come out, we'll diagnose, troubleshoot, and repair the valve, whether it's replacing parts in the valve or whether it's just cleaning out debris from the valve to make sure that it's opening and closing properly.